On his way back to his hometown after years of military service, Major General Samuel Grant, a man once seen as a symbol of strength and loyalty, suddenly finds himself blocked on a quiet road by two young police officers. They insult him, then proceed to beat him right there on the street. But Samuel is more than just a soldier. Instead of seeking revenge, he makes an unexpected choice, a decision that will shock the entire town. What could possibly drive a hardened former general to forgo his right to retaliate? And how will this strange decision affect not only his life but also the lives of those in his community? Follow along to uncover the truth behind this surprising choice. After many years serving in the military, Major General Samuel Grant has finally earned himself a break. Choosing to drive alone back to his hometown, he hopes for time to reflect on his life. The road home is long and quiet, winding through green hills and babbling streams. This peaceful landscape stands in stark contrast to the brutal battles he has witnessed, highlighting the beauty of serenity, something he rarely encountered on the battlefield. Samuel isn't in uniform, he's dressed in a simple, worn outfit. His graying hair and the deep lines on his face bear the marks of time and the hardships he's endured. With his window down, he lets the cool breeze brush over him, carrying with it the scent of the countryside he once loved. As he takes in the scenery, Samuel can't help but think back on his years of service. Flashes of fallen comrades, fierce battles, and countless sleepless nights come to mind, nights spent wondering if he'd make it through to the next day. He wonders if, after all he sacrificed, he'll finally find peace within himself. In a rare moment of introspection, Samuel thinks, how far have I come down this path as a soldier? Did my sacrifices mean something, or did I miss out on something in life? On the way home, Samuel stopped at an old gas station to buy a bottle of water. There, he met a young boy, around 10 years old, who was helping his mother run the shop. The boy immediately noticed Samuel, intrigued by his strong and mature appearance, so different from the people he usually saw in his small rural town. The boy looked up at him with curiosity and admiration, quietly asking, "Are you a soldier, sir? Are you a hero?" Samuel smiled, crouched down beside the boy, and replied gently, "Yes, I was a soldier. But I'm just an ordinary person, afraid and anxious like everyone else." The boy tilted his head, still curious, and asked, "But didn't you save a lot of people? In the movies, soldiers are always heroes." Samuel thought for a moment, his gaze distant and thoughtful. Then he answered softly, "Sometimes, true bravery is about living for others, knowing when to put down weapons and learn to love. Not every battle can be won with strength, son." The boy was left in awe, and his mother gave a slight nod, thanking Samuel for the valuable lesson. Samuel then got back in his car, but he couldn't help but ponder his answer. Had he truly understood the meaning of courage and compassion in the way he had just described? As he returned to his car, Samuel found himself reflecting on his words to the boy. He realized that, for so many years, he had carried the weight of proving his strength, upholding the honor and loyalty expected of a soldier. But was that the sole purpose of life? Or was there something deeper and more meaningful that he had overlooked? Samuel's inner monologue continued. Courage doesn't just come from strength, it comes from the ability to love and forgive. I've spent a lifetime fighting, but how many times have I learned to let go of hatred? Samuel kept driving along the familiar roads leading back to his hometown. The closer he got, the heavier his heart felt with thoughts about life, the meaning of honor, and the value of compassion. For him, this return home was not just a break but a journey to rediscover himself. On a narrow country road heading back into town, Samuel was enjoying the calm atmosphere when he suddenly saw a police car parked across the road up ahead. Thinking it might be a routine checkpoint, he slowed down and stopped. However, when Samuel looked at the two young officers stepping out of the car, he immediately sensed something was off. These two officers, Mike and Jake, had a stern but cold look in their eyes, as if they were waiting for any excuse to teach a lesson to the older man before them. With his simple clothing and calm demeanor, Samuel didn't appear remarkable in their eyes. They didn't realize he was a former major general. Mike, the louder and more domineering of the two, stepped up to Samuel's car and motioned for him to roll down the window. Samuel complied, lowering the window, his expression calm but his gaze sharp as he observed their every move. Mike looked Samuel up and down with a sneer, speaking in a disrespectful tone. "Who are you? Where are you headed? And what are you doing here?" Samuel replied gently, trying to keep his tone steady, "I'm just on my way home to visit family. I have no intention of causing any trouble. This is where I grew up." Jake, the other officer, chuckled, folding his arms across his chest. Interesting. An old man, coming back from who knows where. You're not here to stir up any trouble, are you? Who's to say? Samuel felt insulted, but he decided not to react. He knew that escalating the situation would only make things worse. Mike stared intently at Samuel, as if searching for any sign of suspicious intent. Dissatisfied with Samuel's calm demeanor, he began demanding a series of documents. Samuel handed them over calmly, but Mike barely glanced at them, making it clear he was only going through the motions to assert his authority. Handing the documents back with a look of disdain, Mike said, "Drive carefully, old man. And don't drive too slow, don't want you blocking the road for everyone else. This isn't your road." Samuel looked Mike directly in the eyes, maintaining his composure. "Thanks for the reminder," he said, "but I believe everyone here has the right to use this road." Though spoken softly, Samuel's words clearly irritated Mike. Instead of letting it slide, Mike felt challenged. Jake, standing beside him, nodded in agreement, as if sharing Mike's opinion that this old man was showing an attitude. Mike gestured for Samuel to step out of the car for a security check. Samuel knew he had nothing to hide, but he realized the request was unnecessary. Nevertheless, he chose to cooperate, hoping to avoid further trouble. As he stepped out of the car, Samuel spoke politely but pointedly, "I've complied with your requests. I hope I'll be able to continue my journey without further issues." Mike sneered, stepping closer and looking directly into Samuel's eyes with a provoking glare. "Issues, huh? Do you think you get to call the shots here? Seems like you don't know how to show respect to us, do you?" Samuel responded calmly, his tone turning a shade more serious. "I've cooperated fully and have shown no disrespect. But I think someone in law enforcement should treat people with respect." The officer's provocation intensified. Mike started to feel embarrassed, as if Samuel's calm words were a personal affront. Far from easing the tension, Samuel's calmness only made Mike feel even more challenged by the man he saw as a nobody. Jake, standing beside him, joined in, smirking in agreement and sneering at Samuel. Jake burst into loud laughter, taunting, "Listen to him, talking like he knows the law. We're the ones in charge here. You're just a passerby, got it?" Samuel felt the injustice in their treatment but reminded himself to stay patient. However, Mike suddenly shoved him hard, causing Samuel to stumble and nearly lose his balance. Samuel only looked at them, though inside, anger was beginning to simmer. Still, he held back, knowing that reacting would only make things worse. Mike, with a challenging tone, almost yelling, said, "Acting all noble, huh? Don't think we're going to let you off just because you're being polite." Samuel, still striving to stay calm, responded with a composed but cautionary tone, "I'm not looking for trouble, I just want to be on my way. But if you continue this way, there may be no benefit for anyone." Jake glanced over at Mike as if seeking his approval, and both officers took a step closer, pressing in on Samuel. They seemed intent on using psychological pressure to test his patience, but in Samuel's eyes they found no fear. The tension had reached a peak, yet Samuel remained calm. He looked them straight in the eyes, wondering if this was a test life was throwing his way. With years of experience on the battlefield, he understood that true strength didn't lie in violent reactions, but in his ability to control himself and maintain his dignity. Inwardly, Samuel reminded himself, "Stay calm, Samuel. Don't let them turn you into someone you don't want to be. Patience might be the only strength you have here." Finally, with unshakable patience, Samuel resolved to handle this situation with composure, though a deep sense of indignation stirred within him at the unfairness of it all. The confrontation between Major General Samuel Grant and the two young police officers seemed far from over. Could he continue to hold onto his calm in the face of escalating provocations? And how would Samuel respond when his patience was stretched to the limit? Stay with this story, because in the upcoming chapters, you'll witness a journey filled with drama, a journey where the courage and compassion of a former Major General will be tested like never before. Keep reading to see how Samuel chooses to face the insult and injustice he endures. Mike and Jake, the two young officers, grew increasingly aggressive as Samuel remained composed, unshaken by their provocations. His calmness didn't deter them; instead, it frustrated them, making them feel as though they were being challenged by his quiet dignity. Mike pulled out a citation, looked at Samuel with a smug grin, and threw the paper against his chest. Samuel bent down to pick it up, his eyes showing a hint of sadness but his composure unwavering. Not stopping at the citation, Mike demanded that Samuel open the trunk for a security check. Samuel knew this was merely harassment, but he chose to comply, hoping to avoid escalating the situation further. When he opened the trunk, Mike and Jake began rummaging through his belongings carelessly and roughly, tossing things around so that his personal items fell onto the ground. Samuel watched as some of his most precious keepsakes, family photos, and a medal from his years of military service were strewn about and even stepped on. His heart tightened at the sight, but he remained silent, bending down to pick up each item. As Samuel knelt to pick up his medal, he looked up at Mike, his voice calm but firm. "Do you realize what you're doing, Mike? This isn't how someone in law enforcement should behave." Mike sneered, leaning in close to Samuel's face and hissing, "Old man, you don't seem to get it. Here we are the law, and you're just a nobody passing through." Samuel looked back at him with a steady gaze, one that seemed to carry a reminder of real authority. To him, true power didn't come from intimidation and bullying, but from respect and justice. Even so, he knew there was no reasoning with them in this moment. Seeing that Samuel wouldn't back down to their intimidation, Mike grew impatient. He grabbed Samuel by the shoulder, yanking him up roughly. Samuel steadied himself, and as he began to offer a calm reminder, Jake came up from behind and shoved him hard, causing Samuel to stumble forward, his elbow slamming into the ground. Samuel winced in pain but held himself back, his voice measured yet stern. "You two are crossing a line. As police officers, your duty is to protect, not intimidate." Jake laughed mockingly, listened to him. "Acting like he's somebody important. You think you have the right to lecture us?" Samuel didn't answer but held his gaze firmly on them, silently asserting that he wouldn't allow himself to be diminished by their arrogance. His calm look only fueled their anger, making them feel even more challenged. Without warning, Jake shoved him harder, sending Samuel sprawling onto the gravel road, his hands hitting the ground as a sharp pain shot up his wrist. Mike stepped forward, glaring down at Samuel with contempt, and then, suddenly, he kicked him in the side. Samuel felt the pain radiate through his body, but he still didn't retaliate. "Patience. Stay patient. I can't let hatred control me. Forgiveness is true strength, not violence," Samuel reminded himself, even as he lay there in pain. Seeing Samuel's car as an opportunity to teach him another lesson, Mike walked over to it, opened the gas cap, and shot Samuel a challenging look. Samuel recognized their intent and tried to call out, his voice weakened by pain. "Don't do this. The car isn't just property you can destroy at will," but his words fell on deaf ears. Jake lit his lighter, smirking with satisfaction. Jake, with a triumphant sneer, said to Mike, "Listen to him. Guess we'll have to show him who's in charge." Mike tossed the lighter onto Samuel's car. In an instant, flames erupted, engulfing the entire vehicle. Samuel tried to move but couldn't manage to stand because of the pain in his wrist and side. He could only sit there, watching helplessly as his car, something he had cherished for years, was reduced to a blazing inferno right before his eyes. "Is this a test?" he thought to himself. "Maybe this is my chance to learn to let go of everything, even pride and possessions. Forgiveness isn't about justifying their actions, it's about not letting bitterness consume me." After setting the car ablaze, the two young officers walked back to Samuel, looking at him with mocking expressions. Mike leaned down close to Samuel's face, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Bet you'll remember this and know better next time, right?" Jake laughed, adding, "Just a lesson for people who like to act tough. Hope you get it now." With that, they walked away, leaving Samuel lying there, his body aching and his car still burning brightly. Samuel struggled to keep his composure, though he knew he had been humiliated and brutalized in the cruelest way. He understood that this was a defining moment, one in which he would have to choose between revenge and forgiveness. As the officers disappeared into the distance, Samuel lay on the road, feeling the pain from his injuries. Before him, the flames from his car continued to rage, but within him, another kind of fire was stirring, a quiet flame of patience and forgiveness that he had spent his entire life cultivating. Samuel took a long, deep breath, telling himself he wouldn't let this act of cruelty turn him into a man filled with hatred. He had to return to town and confront this injustice, not with vengeance, but with justice and compassion. The sun was beginning to set, casting a faint glow over the sky. Samuel remained on the ground, his body racked with pain and his spirit worn. He could feel the sharp agony from his broken wrist, his bruised ribs, and the wounds inflicted on him. In the distance, his car continued to burn, thick black smoke billowing into the air. Mustering his strength, Samuel tried to stand, his broken arm hanging limply at his side while he used his other hand to push himself up. He knew he couldn't stay there much longer. He needed to make his way back to town to seek help. Inside, he was still wrestling with the waves of anger and pain that rose within him, but he reminded himself to stay patient and calm. Don't let hatred cloud your path, Samuel. Find a way to resolve this the right way. That car took me a lifetime to save for. But in the end, possessions are only illusions. What truly matters is how we choose to face adversity like this. With that thought in mind, Samuel began to take slow, deliberate steps on the road back to town. Each step was a challenge under the throbbing pain, but he knew that giving up had never been an option for a soldier. As he walked, Samuel replayed the recent events in his mind. He felt betrayed not only by the actions of the two officers but also by the very system he once trusted and defended. But at the same time, he understood that these negative emotions only weakened him, stripping away the calm resolve he had always been proud of. If I cling to this resentment, I'm no different from them. Revenge would only lead to a cycle of suffering. Forgiveness is the only way to rise above it all. Samuel knew that the journey back to town was not just a physical one, it was the greatest test of spirit he had ever faced. As Samuel continued, a couple passing by noticed him in his battered state and immediately approached to help. The husband asked with concern, "Are you all right, sir? We'll take you to the hospital." Samuel offered a weary smile, shaking his head. "Thank you, but I just need to get to town. There are a few things I need to do before I can rest." The wife looked at Samuel with deep sympathy, but seeing the determination in his eyes, she understood that he was a man of strong will who wouldn't let pain keep him from his path. They nodded and helped him steady himself so he could continue on. On the remaining stretch of the road, Samuel wrestled with his thoughts, torn between responding with retaliation or with forgiveness. As a former major general, he had the strength and influence to seek justice in his own way, but a voice within reminded him that compassion might be the way to rise above it all. I could easily make them answer for what they did. But maybe the way to end this cycle of pain is not through violence, but by using compassion to show them a different path. Finally, after a long, arduous journey, Samuel spotted the lights of the town. His body was exhausted, yet his spirit burned with resolve. He had to make those two officers understand the gravity of their actions not by inflicting harm, but by teaching them a lesson in responsibility and humanity. Sometimes strength isn't in striking back, but in the ability to understand and forgive. If I seek only revenge, I'll become just like them. But if I choose forgiveness, perhaps one day, that compassion may change them. Samuel walked slowly into town, his body weary and unsteady, but his eyes held a glimmer of faith in the power of kindness. His journey was no longer just about returning home, it was a path of self-discovery, a decision to face challenges with compassion. Under the dim lights of the evening, Samuel made his way into the town. His body ached all over, yet his gaze was resolute. He headed to the police station, believing it to be the place where he might find justice, though he wrestled internally with the right way to pursue it. As he walked through the door, his presence immediately caught the attention of those inside. The officer on duty noticed his battered state and rushed over, his voice filled with shock and concern. The duty officer asked, worried, "Are you all right? You look like you've been in an accident. We'll call an ambulance right away." Samuel offered a faint smile, his voice calm but firm. "Thank you. I just need a bit of assistance meeting with whoever is in charge here. There's something I need to report." Samuel was led inside and seated, while several other officers quickly brought him water and administered some basic first aid. They were surprised to see an older man, silently enduring his pain without demanding anything other than a meeting with their superior. After a short while, the commanding officer entered and immediately noticed Samuel's distressed appearance. Sitting down across from him, his face showed clear concern. The commanding officer asked, "Can you tell me what happened? Who did this to you?" Samuel looked directly at the officer, his voice steady. "Two officers from your team, Mike and Jake, assaulted me on the road and even set my car on fire. I didn't come here to seek revenge, but I believe we must confront this." The commanding officer fell silent, his expression darkening as he listened to Samuel's words. He immediately understood the gravity of the situation and promised to take appropriate action. However, Samuel looked at him and gently shook his head. Samuel spoke, his tone calm but resolute. "I didn't come here to demand punishment. I came to find a way to help them learn a lesson. I'd like to meet with them not as a victim, but as someone with life experience who wants to help them understand the true values of justice and compassion. The commanding officer was stunned with surprise. He hadn't expected Samuel to choose forgiveness, especially after all that had happened. He looked at Samuel, his gaze full of respect for the man's noble and compassionate heart. The officer nodded, asking, "You truly want to forgive them? After everything they've done?" Samuel nodded. "Yes. If we only seek revenge, we'll be trapped in a cycle of suffering. But if they have a chance to learn from their mistakes, maybe they'll change and become more responsible." After a brief moment, Mike and Jake were brought into the room. The arrogant attitude they'd shown earlier was gone, replaced by expressions of confusion and even fear as they saw Samuel seated there. Both understood they could now be facing serious consequences for their actions. Mike lowered his head, speaking in a quiet, shaky voice. I'm sorry, I was wrong. We didn't know who you were, and we never thought things would get this serious." Samuel looked at them, his gaze calm but penetrating. "It doesn't matter who I am. What matters isn't someone's rank or position, it's how you treat every person, regardless of who they are." Mike and Jake stayed silent, not daring to look up. Samuel could see that they were grappling with feelings of shame and guilt over their actions. He continued, his voice steady. "As police officers, your duty is to protect people, not to abuse your authority and instill fear. The way you treated me wasn't just a personal insult, it damaged the trust that the community has placed in you. Do you understand that?" Jake bowed his head even lower, his voice hoarse with emotion and regret. "We let our pride blind us," Jake said quietly, filled with remorse. "You've given us a chance to recognize our mistakes. I don't know what else to say other than my deepest apologies." Samuel nodded quietly, seeing that his words had truly resonated with them. Rather than pressing further charges, Samuel requested that they participate in ethics training sessions and engage in community service to make amends for their behavior. He hoped that through this experience, they would come to understand the real values of justice and respect for the people they served. Mike looked at Samuel with sincere gratitude. "You could have taken everything from us, but instead you chose a different path. I'll never forget this, and I promise to change." Samuel smiled gently, placing a hand on Mike's shoulder. "True strength isn't in punishing others, but in helping them become better versions of themselves. I hope that, from now on, you both uphold your responsibilities the way they're meant to be upheld." Samuel left the police station with a lighter heart and a newfound sense of peace. He knew that choosing compassion over resentment had freed him from negative emotions and offered a chance to inspire positive change in others. Stepping outside, he looked up at the night sky and took a deep breath. A profound sense of relief washed over him, as if he had just won an inner battle through forgiveness. Forgiveness is not only for others, it's a way to find peace within oneself. Samuel's encounter with the young officers made a powerful impression on everyone present at the station. Word of his compassion quickly spread throughout the town, from the officers to the local community. Many were surprised by Samuel's choice to forgive rather than retaliate. This small town, usually so peaceful, now found itself reflecting on the value of kindness and how to treat others. Recognizing the positive impact of Samuel's actions, the town's mayor and local leaders decided to organize a community gathering with Samuel as the guest of honor. It would be an opportunity for him to share his story and help others understand the importance of compassion and responsibility. The event was held at the town center, drawing a large crowd, including local residents and the entire police force. The room was spacious but still couldn't accommodate everyone, and many had to stand outside. Among those present were Mike and Jake, who stood quietly in a corner, their expressions filled with remorse. Samuel stepped up to the stage, his demeanor calm yet exuding strength. He began to speak, not with forceful words, but with a warm and sincere tone. Samuel's voice rang clearly through the crowd's silence. "I am someone who has spent my life serving in the military. To me, protecting and giving back has always been a sacred duty. Yet, over the years, I have come to realize that true strength doesn't come from fighting to conquer, but from fighting to preserve compassion and dignity." He paused, letting his gaze sweep over the crowd, noticing their attentive expressions. He continued, his eyes filled with a quiet sorrow, but also a resolute spirit. "When I was attacked and humiliated, I had the choice to retaliate. But I knew that if I chose violence, I'd become the very person I did not want to be. Forgiveness is not only a show of tolerance toward others, but it's also a way to free ourselves from hatred and resentment. The townspeople felt the weight of Samuel's words. Some nodded in agreement, while others fell silent, lost in thought. After his speech, an elderly woman in the back raised her hand, asking to speak. The woman asked, her voice choked with emotion, "Mr. Samuel, how could you forgive what they did to you? There must be something that helped you keep such calm and compassion." Samuel smiled gently and replied, "I forgave them because I didn't want them to control my life through anger and resentment. When we forgive, we don't do it for those who hurt us, we do it to free ourselves from the pain. That's the only way I could find peace again." A silence fell over the room as everyone absorbed the depth of his words. A middle-aged man, a former soldier like Samuel, nodded with respect and admiration. Standing in the corner, Mike and Jake watched quietly, their faces filled with confusion and regret. Samuel's words resonated deeply with them, making them realize that they, too, needed to forgive themselves and make a change. After the meeting, they decided to approach Samuel once more to express their remorse and commitment to making amends. Mike stepped closer to Samuel, his voice hesitant. "Mr. Samuel, your words touched my heart. I'll never forget this lesson, and I'll strive to live up to the compassion you've shown me." Jake added, his eyes sincere, "We're going to change. We'll work to be worthy of the trust and kindness you've shown us." Samuel looked at them with a warm smile, placing a hand on each of their shoulders. "You have a second chance," Samuel said. "Use it to become the kind of officers the community can trust, not only to protect them but to treat them with compassion." In the months that followed, the town began to change gradually. Conversations on compassion and responsibility became more frequent, with regular gatherings that included Samuel, local police, and residents. Samuel's story inspired many, not only within the town but also in neighboring areas. Some officers started to participate in community activities, learning about the lives and challenges of the residents so they could serve with understanding and empathy. Mike and Jake became among the most active participants, willingly joining volunteer events and engaging with people to better understand the community's needs and hopes. At another community gathering where people came to hear Samuel speak, he shared one of his most profound philosophies. In a voice filled with emotion, Samuel said, "Life is short, and the world already has enough hurt. If we choose forgiveness, if we choose love over hate, we not only help ourselves but also make our community a better place. Remember, every kind action, every compassionate word, is a way to build a brighter future for us all." Samuel became a spiritual leader, not through authority or rank, but through compassion and unwavering commitment to his ideals. He spread these values throughout the town, prompting people to reflect on themselves and adjust their attitudes and actions in daily life. Samuel's journey was more than a personal struggle, it was the mission of a true soldier, one who fought for peace, kindness, and respect. Strength is not only found in battles, but in the inner peace we gain when we learn to forgive and love. With the positive changes taking root in the community, Samuel realized that the town had the potential to become a model of compassion and unity. He sensed that the people were ready to embrace a new way of life, one in which everyone felt respected and cared for. He also saw the need for better training for the police force, not only in skills but in the spirit of responsibility and professional ethics. Samuel proposed a special training program to the town's government, one focused on core values such as compassion, empathy, and humane conflict resolution. The mayor and local officials, having seen the positive impact of Samuel's story, quickly approved his proposal. The first training session was held at the police station. The entire town took an interest in the program not only because it marked a new approach to law enforcement, but because it was led by Samuel himself, whose story had inspired them all. In the first session, every local officer was present, including Mike and Jake, who had changed significantly since the earlier incident. Samuel stood before the crowd, his gaze steady. He didn't begin with dry lectures. Instead, he shared his story, helping everyone understand that compassion wasn't just a concept but a series of tangible actions. Samuel spoke, his voice warm and sincere. "During my time in the military, I learned many lessons, not only from my comrades but from the people we were there to protect. In war, we fought to defend our country, but here, in this community, your true strength lies not in weapons or authority, but in understanding and compassion toward the people." He paused, looking at each person, then continued, "As police officers, you have power, and that power can be used to build or to break. I want you to remember that each citizen you encounter has their own story, their own pains and struggles. Understanding will help you see them as real people, not just as lawbreakers or troublemakers." Samuel's words brought a profound silence over the room. Even the officers who had once doubted the value of compassion began to reconsider the true meaning of their responsibilities. Samuel didn't stop at theory. In his training program, he also organized practical exercises so that the police could experience and understand the lives of the community members more deeply. One exercise involved officers disguising themselves as ordinary citizens to experience the public services they typically patrolled. Mike and Jake were assigned to a neighborhood they once considered troublesome. As they blended in as regular citizens, they realized that many of these residents were simply trying to make it through each day, rather than being the troublemakers they had once assumed. Jake sighed, his voice reflective. "I used to think these people were just a nuisance, always looking to cause problems. But now, being in their shoes, I see how difficult their lives are." Mike nodded in agreement, his gaze thoughtful. "Exactly. I've realized that they just need someone to listen to them, someone to understand and support them. I was wrong to judge them based only on appearances." Through Samuel's training sessions, each officer began to gradually change. They recognized the importance of listening and empathy, learning to put themselves in others' shoes to understand their lives better. This didn't just make them more effective in their roles, but also helped them earn the trust and respect of the community. After several months, the town's officers grew closer to the residents. They no longer kept a cold distance, but showed genuine care and a readiness to help. These small gestures sparked a wave of positive change throughout the town. The townspeople began to notice a stark shift in how their local police behaved. Officers once seen as distant and rigid had become approachable and trustworthy. Community gatherings turned into spaces where residents could share their concerns and hopes, receiving support from the police. One evening, at a community meeting, an elderly resident spoke up with heartfelt emotion. The resident said, his voice trembling, "I used to fear the police, but now I feel they're friends, people I can rely on. We're grateful to Mr. Samuel for bringing such a profound change to our town." Following the success of the training program, the town's mayor met with Samuel to express gratitude and to ask him to continue organizing more initiatives. The mayor recognized that what Samuel had done was not just police reform, it was a transformation of the entire way the community lived and interacted. The mayor said, his voice filled with appreciation, "Samuel, you've done something miraculous for this town. You've not only improved the police force, but created an environment where people and officers understand and respect each other. I hope you'll continue this mission and help us build an even better community." Samuel smiled humbly and replied, "I'm just the one planting the seeds. The change comes from everyone here. True transformation doesn't come from one person, it comes from the shared commitment of the entire community. We've seen the power of compassion, and I believe we can go even further." Samuel looked upon his accomplishments with a humble pride. He had not only helped reshape the mindset and actions of the police force, but also inspired the entire community to embrace compassion and mutual understanding. In the eyes of the people, he was no longer a former major general, but a teacher, a spiritual leader who sparked a movement to live with kindness and a sense of responsibility. Compassion is not just a fleeting feeling, it's a journey, a choice we make every day. And when we choose compassion, we don't just change ourselves, we change the world around us. As time passed, the transformation in the small town where Samuel had come to stay began to ripple outward. His story of compassion and perseverance inspired nearby regions, prompting local governments to take interest in the values he promoted. People from neighboring towns flocked to learn and participate in the training sessions Samuel led. Samuel's story quickly caught the attention of the media and spread widely. Even officials from larger cities reached out, inviting him to implement training programs in ethics and compassion for their police forces. Yet Samuel always reminded them that true change had to come from within each person and from the unity of the community as a whole. Despite his undeniable success, Samuel faced resistance from some who were unwilling to change, especially from a group of police officers in another town with more traditional views. They believed that police work required a tough approach and that showing leniency or weakness to the public was not suitable. At one meeting, a middle-aged officer from a different town stood up to voice his objections. The officer asked challengingly, "Mr. Samuel, do you really believe that compassion can maintain order? Do you think we can handle every issue just by being understanding?" Samuel smiled calmly, his eyes reflecting a deep-seated confidence as he responded, "I believe that compassion doesn't make us weak, it strengthens us from within. When we understand and respect the people we protect, they respond with trust. A strong community is one built on trust and understanding, not fear. Samuel's reply left the room in silence. Gradually, the people around him recognized the strength of his words, and a profound respect for him became evident in their expressions. Eventually, other regions began to adopt Samuel's training programs as well. He traveled widely, sharing his story and encouraging police forces to open their hearts and build trust with their communities. His messages of forgiveness and compassion sparked a wave of positive change. Samuel conveyed that justice was not only about maintaining order but about safeguarding dignity and peace for everyone. Returning to the small town after his long journey, Samuel stepped into the square where those first community gatherings had taken place. The people there, police officers and everyday citizens alike, had changed. They had learned to treat one another with respect and understanding. The police had become individuals the townspeople could rely on, and everyone saw Samuel as a teacher, a quiet hero who had sown seeds of compassion in their hearts. In the golden light of dusk, Samuel stood silently, looking around with pride and peace in his eyes. He had completed his mission, not through grand victories, but through the quiet power of kindness and dignity. Compassion is a light that can spread everywhere, touching every heart. A strong community is not built on fear, but on love and trust. The story of Major General Samuel Grant has taught us a profound lesson about compassion and the value of forgiveness. In life, we may encounter hardships that seem impossible to overcome, but how we choose to face them is what truly matters. Remember, true strength does not come from revenge, but from forgiveness and the ability to heal wounds with love. If this story touched you, please share it to spread the message of compassion and kindness even further. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to support us and to see more inspiring stories. Thank you for watching and for your support. Let's work together to build a strong community, a world full of compassion and humanity. Goodbye, and we look forward to seeing you in the next story.